I am a grandmother who once believed family always stays close. I raised my children with love and patience. I worked long days and longer nights. I saved every dollar for their future. I never complained when life was hard. I never asked for much in return. All I wanted was respect and time. Years passed and my hair turned white. My hands grew weak, but my heart stayed strong. I trusted my children completely. That trust followed me to the airport that day. It was my first time flying so far from home. America felt like a dream and a fear together. My son said everything would be easy. My daughter smiled and held my arm. They said I should rest in the lounge. They said they would come back after check-in. I believed them without doubt. I sat down slowly with my small bag. The lounge was bright and cold. People walked fast with confident faces. I watched planes through the big glass walls. Time moved quietly at first. Minutes felt gentle and harmless. I thought about my late husband. I wished he was beside me. He always warned me to be careful. I checked my phone again and again. No message came. I told myself they were busy. I told myself family never forgets. An hour passed, then another. My heart began to feel heavy. The lounge felt louder and lonelier. I held my bag tighter. I prayed silently for patience. I remembered every sacrifice I made. I remembered every meal I skipped. I remembered every dream I delayed. Still I waited with hope. Because a grandmother believes. And that belief was about to be tested. The chairs in the lounge felt harder as time continued to pass and my back began to ache, but I did not move because I was afraid they might return and not find me sitting there. I watched families laughing together, couples holding hands, and children running freely, while I stayed still like a shadow holding on to hope. My phone battery slowly dropped, and with every passing minute my chest felt tighter. I replayed my daughter's smile in my mind and my son's calm voice, telling me to wait and rest. I wondered if I had misunderstood something, or if the airport was bigger than I imagined. Maybe they were lost, maybe lines were long. I kept creating excuses for them because a mother's heart refuses to accept pain. Quickly hunger crept in quietly, and my hands trembled as I reached into my bag, finding only a small snack I had saved for later. I ate slowly, trying to calm myself, and whispered prayers asking God to protect my children and guide them back to me. The loud announcements echoed around me in a language that felt foreign and confusing, and I felt smaller with every sound. My legs grew stiff, my eyes searched every familiar face passing by, and each time it was not them. My memories began to flood. In the nights I stayed awake, when they were sick, the mornings I sent them to school with warm food and clean clothes, the years I stood strong so they could grow without fear. And now, sitting alone in a place full of people, I felt an ache deeper than loneliness. It was the quiet fear that something was wrong, yet I stayed because leaving that chair felt like giving up, and a grandmother never gives up easily. As the hours stretched on the light outside, the glass walls slowly changed, and I realized day was turning into evening without me noticing. My body felt tired, but my mind refused to rest. I stood up once, then sat back down, afraid my legs might not carry me far if I tried to walk too much. The smell of food from nearby places made my stomach hurt with emptiness, yet I told myself I could wait a little longer because surely they would come soon. I watched a young woman help her elderly mother stand, and that small moment made my eyes burn with tears. I quickly looked away, not wanting strangers to see my weakness. I pressed my phone close to my ear, hoping it would ring even once, but the silence felt louder than any announcement. I thought about calling them, but fear stopped me, fear that maybe I would hear something I was not ready to accept. I remembered my childhood when my own mother waited for me late into the night, and how she never slept until she knew I was safe. That memory wrapped around my heart like a tight knot, and I asked myself when life had changed so much that waiting became my role. Now my fingers trembled as I adjusted my shawl, and I whispered prayers asking for strength, not answers, because answers felt too heavy. I noticed airport staff walking past, but I did not ask for help because I believed my family would return and explain everything. I kept telling myself this was just a misunderstanding, just a delay, just a test of patience. Yet deep inside, a quiet voice began to rise, a voice that asked, what if they do not come back? And that thought scared me more than being alone in a foreign place. When night finally settled outside the glass walls, the airport lights grew brighter and colder, and my body felt heavier than before. My eyes burned from staying open too long, yet I refused to sleep because sleeping felt dangerous, like I might miss the moment they returned. I hugged my small bag close to my chest, as if it carried every piece of my past inside it. People around me changed shifts, new faces appeared, while I remained in the same chair like time had forgotten me. I tried to stand again, and this time my knees shook, forcing me to sit back down slowly. I felt embarrassed and weak, but no one seemed to notice. Everyone was busy with their own lives. I remembered the day my son was born, how small and helpless he looked, and how I promised to protect him for the rest of my life. I remembered my daughter learning to walk, holding my fingers tightly, afraid to fall, and now here I was holding on to memories because they were the only thing keeping me steady. My phone battery reached its last. line and I turned it off to save what little power remained. The silence after that felt final, like a door closing. I looked around hoping to see a familiar face, but all I saw were strangers rushing to destinations I was no longer sure I whispered my children's names softly, hoping the sound would somehow reach them wherever they were. My heart began to accept a painful possibility that waiting might not end soon, and that thought settled deep inside me, heavy and cold. Yet even then I stayed, because leaving felt like admitting I had been forgotten, and I was not ready to accept that truth. My body began to ache in places I had forgotten could hurt, and every movement felt slow and careful, like I was made of fragile glass. I watched the cleaning staff move quietly through the lounge, wiping tables and empty chairs, and it struck me that the day was truly ending, yet my waiting had no end. The air felt dry, making my throat sore, but I had no energy to search for water. I thought about all the times I put my own needs last so my children could have more, and how natural that choice always felt. Love never felt like a sacrifice back then, but sitting alone now, I wondered if love could sometimes make a person invisible. I remembered family gatherings where my voice slowly faded into the background, replaced by younger conversations and louder laughter, and I realized this feeling was not new. It had just grown stronger here in this quiet place far from home. My eyes filled with tears, but they did not fall. Instead, they stayed heavy and burning like my heart. I questioned myself softly, asking if I had done something wrong, if I had asked for too much by simply wanting to be included. My hands shook as I reached into my bag and touched an old photograph folded carefully inside. It showed all of us smiling together, and for a moment I felt warmth return to my chest. I pressed the picture against my heart and promised myself I would stay strong, because a grandmother carries pain silently so others do not have to, and even in that lonely moment, I still hoped tomorrow would bring answers, and that my waiting would finally be understood. The night dragged on, and the airport seemed emptier with every passing hour. The bright lights now flickered slightly, and shadows stretched across the lounge. I shifted in my chair, trying to find comfort, but there was none. My bag lay beside me like a small companion, silently sharing my long wait. I closed my eyes for a moment, but memories rushed in too quickly. I saw birthdays I had celebrated alone when my children were busy. I saw the nights I cried quietly after disagreements, hoping they would understand my heart one day, and I remembered my husband's gentle words before he passed about patience and the strength hidden inside a grandmother. I whispered his name softly, as if calling him could bring him back to this moment. I thought about calling someone for help, but pride and stubborn hope held me back. My chest felt heavy with longing and worry, and every face passing by reminded me I was invisible in this vast place. I focused on the sounds of announcements, footsteps, and rolling suitcases. Trying to anchor myself in reality, I told myself over and over that soon my children would return and explain the misunderstanding that had led to this long wait. My fingers touched the old photograph again, pressing it tightly to my chest, and I imagined their faces smiling at me and the warmth of their hugs wrapping around me. I closed my eyes once more, not to sleep, but to gather strength, because the hours were endless, yet I refused to give up even as the loneliness tried to swallow me whole. The first signs of dawn crept through the tall glass windows, casting pale light across the empty chairs, and I realized I had spent the entire night waiting. My body was stiff and my muscles ached, but I refused to leave. I could not give up now. The thought of standing up and walking felt overwhelming, yet staying meant hope, and hope had kept me alive all these years. I remembered my children as babies, how I held them close during storms, how I stayed awake with them through every fever and nightmare. And I wondered if they remembered those nights now as I remembered them. My throat tightened, and I swallowed hard, trying not to cry. I watched other travelers rushing with suitcases and conversations, and it felt strange that life moved so quickly around me while my world had slowed to this single chair. My bag still lay beside me, holding a few personal things, and the photograph pressed against my chest gave me the courage to endure the ache of waiting. Every sound made me look up, every shadow made me hold my breath, and I wondered if the next step in my life would come from a familiar face finally appearing, or from learning to face this loneliness alone. I whispered prayers again, asking for patience, strength, and clarity, and promised myself that even if they did not return, I would survive. I would carry the love I had given them in my heart, and let it guide me forward through the unknown. The morning grew brighter, and the airport lounge slowly came alive with travelers and announcements, yet I remained in my chair, clutching my bag and photograph tightly. The hours had blurred together into a long, endless night, and now the new day felt strange and heavy at the same time. I tried to stand and stretch my legs, but every movement reminded me of the long wait and the ache in my body. I thought about calling someone for help, but pride and hope held me back. I told myself surely they would return soon, even if it had been longer than expected. I remembered all the times I had waited for loved ones in my life, and how waiting had always taught me patience and endurance, yet this wait felt different. It was heavier, it pressed on my chest, and filled me with a quiet fear of being forgotten. I watched children run past their parents holding hands, laughing, and the sight made my heart ache with longing. I wondered if my children remembered their grandmother waiting silently somewhere in the world for them. I thought about my own life and the sacrifices I had made, every decision, every choice, all for them, and now sitting alone I questioned silently if those sacrifices were ever seen or appreciated. I closed my eyes, imagining their faces smiling at me, their hands reaching for mine, and that small thought gave me strength to remain seated, to endure a little longer, and believe that love always finds its way even in the loneliest of places. Hours passed slowly, and the airport buzzed with travelers rushing to gates and announcements echoing through the halls, yet I remained in the same chair, holding my bag like a shield against the emptiness around me. My body ached, and my mind felt heavy, but I refused to leave. I remembered the nights I stayed awake with my children when they were sick, the mornings I made them breakfast and packed their school bags, the countless times I stayed strong while my own heart quietly wished for comfort. Now, all that love and patience seemed to come back to me as both warmth and pain, because the children I waited for were nowhere in sight. I pressed the old photograph against my chest, imagining the laughter we once shared, and silently whispered prayers for their safety. Every shadow passing by made my heart leap with hope, and then settle again in disappointment. The quiet ache of uncertainty pressed on me, and I realized that love is patient and love is enduring, but it is also sometimes lonely and misunderstood. I thought about my late husband and the words he spoke about courage and resilience, and I repeated them to myself as a mantra: to survive the long hours, to survive the ache, to survive the quiet fear that perhaps this waiting would last even longer than I imagined. Yet, even with that fear inside me, I refused to give up, because a grandmother carries hope and strength in her heart, even when the world forgets her existence. The afternoon sun began to cast long shadows across the airport lounge, and my body felt heavier with each passing hour. My legs ached, my back screamed, and my eyelids grew heavier, yet I could not let myself sleep, because sleep might mean missing them. Returning might mean missing the moment I had waited for so long. I watched the travelers rushing past, their purpose clear and certain, while I sat anchored to the same chair, holding my bag and the photograph pressed to my chest. The quiet hum of conversations around me felt like a distant melody, as if I were floating in a world apart. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made in my life, every sleepless night, every hunger I had endured, every worry I had swallowed to keep my children safe and happy. I wondered if they ever realized the weight I carried silently for them, and yet even in this painful solitude I felt a strange pride that I had loved so completely, that I had waited so patiently, and I whispered their names softly, hoping somehow the sound would reach them. My chest tightened with hope and fear, and I prayed once again for patience, for strength, and for the courage to endure whatever the hours might bring, because the love of a grandmother is endless, and even in the coldest and loneliest moments it shines bright enough to guide her forward. Night fully fell outside the airport, and the lounge lights glowed softly over empty chairs. I remained seated, holding my bag and the photograph close. My body ached from hours of sitting, my legs stiff and sore, my back tense, but my heart refused to give up. I watched travelers rushing past, to gates, announcements echoing, and people speaking in hurried voices all around me, yet I felt like I was in a world apart. Memories of my children flooded my mind, their laughter, their tears, their first steps, the birthdays I had organized with love, the nights I stayed awake through their illnesses, and the countless moments I sacrificed for them. Every memory wrapped around me like a warm blanket and gave me strength. I whispered their names softly over and over, as if calling them would summon them back to my side. I thought about all the times I had endured loneliness for their sake, all the nights I had waited for them to return home safely, and I realized that waiting had become my strength as much as my pain. The photograph pressed to my chest reminded me of love that never fades, and even though the hours were long and the night felt endless, I promised myself I would endure, because a grandmother's heart carries patience and hope beyond measure, and that hope, even in the darkest moments, could shine bright enough to light a way forward. The first rays of sunlight began to filter through the large glass windows, casting a soft glow over the lounge. I sat still, holding my bag and the photograph to my chest. My body was exhausted, my muscles stiff and sore, but my heart remained full of hope. I watched travelers hurry to gates, families reunited with laughter and joy, and I realized that the world moved forward whether I was noticed or not. Yet I refused to give up. I whispered my children's names again, hoping somehow they would hear me. In the distance I finally saw familiar faces approaching. My heart leapt with a mixture of relief and disbelief. They ran to me, and I could feel the warmth of their arms around me. Tears streamed down my face, but I did not care, for I had waited through the long night, the ache of uncertainty and the weight of loneliness, and now all of it melted into this single perfect moment. I held them close, my heart swelling with a love that had endured years of sacrifice, patience, and waiting. I realized then that life's most powerful lessons were learned in the quiet moments, the ones that test your spirit and your heart. I forgave the fear I had felt and embraced the overwhelming joy that came with reunion. I promised myself that even when waiting seemed endless, love and hope could carry you through anything. And as we walked together toward the gate, I knew that the strength of a grandmother's love could withstand any distance, any delay, and even the coldest lonely airport lounge could never diminish the light she carries inside.